Welcome to this deep dive. It's great to have you with us today.
Yeah, really glad you're here. We've got a pretty wild mission for you.
We really do. Today, we are plunging into a world that officially does not exist.
Right. We're using investigative journalist Nick Cook's work in his book, The Hunt for Zero Point, to guide this whole exploration.
Exactly. And to set the stage for you, I want you to picture this. It is the middle of the night in July 1986.
Okay.
A law student named Amelia Lopez is camping with some friends in the Sequoia National Forest in California.
Out in the middle of nowhere.
Completely off the grid. Suddenly, a massive sonic boom completely shatters the silence.
Wow.
It's so intense, it actually kicks embers from their campfire straight up into the sky.
That's terrifying.
And then moments later, the entire horizon lights up with an enormous explosion. Amelia honestly thinks she has just witnessed a nuclear blast.
Which makes sense in 1986.
Right. But when she and her friends hike toward the crash site, they aren't greeted by local forest rangers.
No, definitely not.
They are ambushed by SWAT-style soldiers.
Assault rifles, night vision gear, the works.
Exactly. These campers are pushed into the dirt, they're threatened, and aggressively told they're trespassing on government property.
Because Amelia didn't see a nuke?
No, she didn't. She witnessed the crash of an F-117A stealth fighter.
And that 1986 incident is just the perfect entry point for us today.
It really is.
Because that aircraft was a crown jewel of the black world.
For those who don't know, what exactly is the black world?
It's this hidden reservoir of heavily funded defense programs, projects so deeply classified they literally don't exist on paper.
Like the stealth fighter.
Right. The public had no idea the F-117A even existed, yet there it was, flying in the physical world while being entirely erased from the bureaucratic one.
And the premise of our deep dive today builds directly on that reality.
Yeah. If an entire stealth fighter program can be engineered, funded, and hidden in that black world for years...
What else is in there?
Exactly. Did the aerospace industry actually discover the secret to anti-gravity back in the 1950s?
And then just bury it behind a wall of ultimate impenetrable secrecy.
That is the big question.
And it's the question we need you to keep in mind today as we go through this.
Our mission is to unearth the paper trail.
Examine the declassified documents.
And piece together the timeline of what might be the most massive technological mystery of the 20th century.
So let's jump back to the 1950s,
Yeah.
specifically 1956.
Publicly, this is the era of tail fins on Cadillacs.
The birth of rock and roll.
But inside the aerospace industry, it was apparently the golden age of anti-gravity.
Which sounds crazy, but there's a 1956 article by Michael Gladich titled, "The G Engines Are Coming."
And let's be clear for you listening, this wasn't printed in some fringe, basement-published sci-fi fanzine.
Not at all. We are talking about serious, heavily vetted industry publications.
Like the highly respected journal Antigravity.
And they weren't quoting crackpots either. They were quoting the absolute heavyweights of the era.
Right, guys like William Bill Lear.
The founder of Lear Inc. Yes, the Learjet guy.
And Lawrence D. Bell, the founder of Bell Aircraft.
The very company that built the X-1 that broke the sound barrier.
Exactly. These titans of industry were openly, publicly talking about canceling out gravity and building weightless airliners.
It's hard to even wrap your head around.
What's fascinating here is the sheer unadulterated confidence of these industry leaders.
They weren't just spitballing.
No, they weren't speaking in vague hypotheticals or science fiction tropes. They were talking about actual engineering timelines.
Yeah, take George S. Trimble, for example.
Right. At the time, he was the vice president in charge of advanced programs at Martin Aircraft.
Which later became part of Lockheed Martin.
Trimble specifically predicted that conquering gravity would take about the same amount of time and effort as the Manhattan Project.
He genuinely thought it could be done. Saying they'll conquer gravity in 5 years.
Sounds a lot like standard post-war hubris.
Exactly. We had just split the atom. We just broke the sound barrier. Couldn't Trimble just be suffering from extreme technological overconfidence?
That's a fair initial read. But the subsequent behavior of the entire industry contradicts the idea that this was just boastful PR.
How so?
Well, if it were just hubris, you'd expect a slow fizzle, right? A gradual realization that the math was too hard, followed by quiet pivots to other projects.
Sure, projects fade away all the time.
But that is not what happened. Almost overnight, the conversation didn't just fade. It stopped dead.
Just a brick wall.
By 1960, bringing up anti-gravity in aerospace circles became an absolute taboo. It was as if someone threw a massive, industry-wide kill switch on the entire field of electrogravitics.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this is where the timeline gets genuinely suspicious.
It really does.
40 years after those confident articles were published, Nick Cook actually tracked down George S. Trimble.
Right, he was living quietly in retirement in Arizona.
And at first, Trimble agreed to an interview to talk about his old advanced programs, which makes sense. Retired engineers usually love talking about their glory days.
Oh, absolutely.
But suddenly, Trimble abruptly canceled.
Out of nowhere.
And the public relations contact who spoke to him afterward noted that Trimble sounded like a terrified old man.
He explicitly warned Cook to drop the investigation entirely.
Why would a retired, highly successful engineer be terrified to talk about an old, supposedly abandoned concept?
Because you don't get terrified over a failed pipe dream.
Right.
You get terrified because you've bumped up against a security classification that carries severe, life-altering penalties.
I want you to really imagine the industrial reality of a true, fuelless propulsion source.
Think about what that means.
A technology that allows an aircraft to accelerate instantly to extreme speeds.
To pull right-angle turns without crushing the pilot under immense G-forces.
The economic and military ramifications of that kind of technology are world-altering.
It makes jet engines obsolete.
Rocket propellants, gone. Essentially, the entire global fossil fuel infrastructure, obsolete overnight.
If a breakthrough of that magnitude occurred, the military would demand the highest level of ultimate secrecy.
The economic disruption alone would be considered a severe national security threat.
Which brings us to the underlying science they might have been trying to hide.
Pioneered by a brilliant, if slightly eccentric, inventor named Thomas Townsend Brown.
Back in the 1920s, decades before this 1956 PR boom, Brown developed a device he called the gravitor.
He discovered that if he charged this electrical condenser with 100 kilovolts of electricity,
A massive amount of power.
it exhibited a measurable weight loss or gain, depending entirely on its orientation. It actually produced physical thrust.
And through his experiments, Brown concluded that the absolute most aerodynamic and efficient shape for an electrogravitational craft
Was a flat disk.
a literal flying saucer.
And Brown wasn't just building toys in his garage. He had deep, verified ties to the military.
Particularly the Navy. He did highly classified acoustic and magnetic mine-sweeping research during World War II.
So he was a known quantity to the defense establishment.
Very much so. By 1952, he formally pitched his anti-gravity research to the military in a proposal called Project Winter Haven.
This was not some small, theoretical, conceptual study either.
No, Winter Haven was a structured engineering blueprint to build a Mach 3 manned anti-gravity fighter.
There is this documented anecdote of a U.S. Air Force Major General, Victor Bertrandius, visiting Brown's foundation.
The general saw a tethered model disc flying under high voltage.
And he didn't laugh it off.
Not at all. He reported back to his superiors that he was thoroughly frightened by the implications of what he saw. He believed the technology was real and viable.
But then, just as quickly as Brown gets the military's attention, he gets aggressively shut down,
The military issues something called the Caddy Report.
which completely dismisses Brown's electrogravitic findings.
The report claimed his discs were just moving because of electric wind.
Basically just ionizing the air around the craft and creating a tiny breeze.
Right, and they calculated it to be only 0.3% efficient.
Following that report, they declassified the Winter Haven blueprint and publicly dropped all official interest in his work.
Just walked away.
Let me stop there, though. Isn't electric wind a real documented phenomenon?
Oh, absolutely.
Couldn't Brown have just been misinterpreting ion displacement as anti-gravity?
Ion wind is definitely a real physical phenomenon, but the thrust profiles Brown was documenting with that 100 kilovolt gravitor didn't align cleanly with standard ion displacement calculations.
The math didn't add up for just a breeze.
Right. The Caddy report's dismissal was overly simplistic, and the abruptness of it is suspicious in its own right, especially considering the timing of the 1950s black budget boom.
But what happens next is what truly damages Brown's legacy.
He inexplicably gets linked to the myth of the Philadelphia experiment.
Right, the ultimate paranormal toxic waste dump.
For anyone who follows this space, you probably already know the story.
The Navy supposedly makes the USS Eldridge invisible, teleportation goes wrong, chaos ensues.
It's a completely outlandish piece of lore that surfaced heavily in the 1970s.
But somehow, Thomas Townsend Brown's name was deliberately woven right into the center of that narrative.
If we look at this through the lens of intelligence operations, this is a textbook maneuver.
How so?
The Soviets had a specific term for this: disinformatsia, or disinformation.
Right.
The absolute most effective way to hide a real, highly classified project, whether that is advanced radar stealth or actual electrogravitic anti-gravity work.
Is to surround the legitimate researcher with a myth so absurd that no serious academic or mainstream journalist will ever touch it.
Exactly. By linking Brown's real electrogravitic patents to stories of teleporting ships in parallel dimensions, his credibility was completely ruined.
It's the perfect way to quarantine a leak.
It really is.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Let's step away from Brown for a second and look at the internal military paperwork from that exact same era. In 1947, 5 years before Brown pitches Project Winter Haven, we have a secret memo from General Nathan Twining.
Who was the head of the U.S. Army Air Force's Air Materiel Command?
Twining puts in writing that the flying discs people were reporting in the skies were something real and not visionary or fictitious.
That's a massive admission.
But the absolute kicker is a postscript where Twining admits that constructing piloted aircraft with extreme maneuverability and saucer shapes is potentially within the present U.S. knowledge.
Which is wild.
How could that possibly be true in 1947 before Brown even formalizes his Mach 3 pitch?
To answer that, we have to rewind slightly to 1944, right over the Rhineland in Germany.
Let's examine the operational reports from the 415th Night Fighter Squadron.
Lieutenant Ed Schlueter, a pilot, and his radar operator, Don Myers, were flying a P-61 Black Widow on a combat mission.
Suddenly, they are stalked by a formation of glowing, highly maneuverable orbs.
They dubbed them Foo Fighters.
And the bizarre anomalous thing was that their advanced onboard radar couldn't track these glowing objects at all.
The orbs just matched the bomber's evasive maneuvers flawlessly, hovered as if observing them, and then vanished.
And Schluter and Myers weren't the only ones. The squadron's records are packed with similar encounters.
Which points us toward the heavily debated legend of Nazi secret weapons.
Right. Claims from writers like Rudolf Lusar and Renato Vesco argued that those Foo Fighters weren't extraterrestrial.
They were highly advanced German drones, specifically something called the Feuerball.
Designed to disrupt Allied bomber engines using intense electromagnetic fields.
They also detailed larger manned projects, like a disc built by engineers named Schriever and Habermol.
Supposedly, this V7 disc utilized a radical radial flow gas turbine
to hit speeds of 2,000 kilometers per hour in 1945.
Now let's translate that engineering term for a second because it's critical. A standard linear jet engine, like what you see on a commercial airliner today.
Pulls air in the front, compresses it, and shoots it straight out the back.
Right. But a radial flow gas turbine operates differently.
It pulls air in and flings it outward centrifugally, creating a massive, flat, spinning vortex of energy.
It is quite literally the perfect aerodynamic engine design if you are trying to power a disc-shaped craft.
It sounds like pure science fiction for 1945.
It does. But there's a very real, documented paper trail regarding the U.S. military's desperate hunt for this exact technology right as the war ended.
It was called Operation LUSTY,
which stood for Luftwaffe Secret Technology. U.S. intelligence teams scoured the ruins of Europe to plunder German scientific secrets before the Soviets could get them.
In those unclassified files, there is a highly suspicious memo from September 1945.
Written by Lieutenant Colonel A.R. Sullivan.
In it, Sullivan abruptly orders that all investigations into balls of fire and remote interference with aircraft be permanently closed.
With a negative result.
This raises an important question for you to consider. Why would an intelligence officer prematurely close an investigation into enemy technology just as they were finding the exact hardware that matched their own pilot's combat report?
LUSD investigators had just uncovered German facilities working on exactly those concepts.
They found a sensor called the Windhund that was explicitly designed to track aircraft exhaust.
And directed energy weapons meant to halt engines mid-flight.
In the pragmatic world of military intelligence, you don't shut down a successful search unless you have already found what you were looking for.
Secured the physical assets.
And now urgently need to put a lid on the operation so no one else asks questions.
So if the U.S. military absorbed this radical German radial flow disk technology in 1945,
and simultaneously T.T. Brown is proving out electrogravitics in the Navy,
we have a massive, highly classified knowledge base building up right at the dawn of the Cold War.
And this brings us back to the fascinating concept of things being hidden in plain sight.
In the 1950s, the military actually publicized a flying saucer project called the Avrocar.
Built in Canada by Avro Aircraft.
It looked exactly like a classic sci-fi UFO, but when it flew for the press, it was a total joke.
It wobbled aggressively.
Yeah. It could barely hover a few feet off the ground before losing stability. The press and the public completely laughed it off as a failed experiment.
But if you dig into the declassified documents from the Canadian Special Projects Group, the narrative shifts entirely.
The wobbling Avrocar was very likely a brilliantly executed misdirection.
It was a blind for a parallel, highly classified project known as Project Silverbug.
Also referred to as Project Y2.
While the public was laughing at the hovering Avrocar, the exact same engineering team was drawing up serious blueprints for a Mach 4 interceptor.
Capable of reaching 100,000 feet.
And what was the power source for Project Silverbug?
A massive radial flow gas turbine.
The exact same exotic jet engine technology that the Germans had supposedly been developing for the Schriever and Habermas discs at the end of World War II.
Wait, stop right there. A Mach 4 interceptor operating at 100,000 feet in the 1950s.
I know.
We barely had standard supersonic flight locked down in the public sector.
That is the entire point of the Black World. The public timeline of aerospace development is essentially a curated museum exhibit.
Wow.
The real bleeding-edge development happens decades earlier behind the classification wall.
It's incredible how the pieces start to align when you look past the public failures like the Avrocar.
Yeah.
But it begs a massive question. If the blueprint for this technology has been around for decades and the math exists, why do we see floating cars and weightless airliners today?
To answer this, Dr. Dan Marcus, a British scientist, provides a brilliant analogy.
He compares the current public state of anti-gravity research to the public state of nuclear physics back in 1939.
It's a deeply accurate comparison. In 1939, the fundamental math for atomic energy was out there in the academic ether.
Physicists globally knew splitting the atom was theoretically possible.
But the massive industrial engineering application required to build a bomb or a reactor was unimaginable to the general public.
If we connect this to the bigger picture,
Dr. Marcus explains that today, all the complex math required for gravity control is openly available in boring, dense university papers.
right, things like topology and nonlinear differential equations.
And let's translate that jargon for a second. We are talking about the mathematics of bending shapes, applied directly to how space-time deforms.
And equations that describe highly complex, unpredictable systems like turbulent plasma or gravity wells.
Exactly. The theoretical math is sitting right there in university libraries. But the application of that math, the physical engineering, is locked away in the Black World.
Marcus makes the point that expecting a conventional, publicly traded aerospace company to build an anti-gravity ship today is like asking a 17th century cart maker to build a steam locomotive.
They just don't have the paradigm, the tooling, or the conceptual framework for it.
The vision and the endless stream of black budget money required to execute it is exclusively an American military enterprise.
And what's wild is that even on the public side, the mask slips occasionally.
Look at NASA's Advanced Space Transportation Program, or ASTP.
There's a program manager there named Gary Lyles, based out of Huntsville, Alabama.
Publicly, his team is tasked with working on hybrid rockets to make getting payloads into orbit slightly cheaper.
But he freely admits on the record that they have a secret parallel group of thinkers looking far, far beyond chemical rockets.
They are actively looking at space warp and Star Trek-like propulsion.
They are trying to figure out the physics required to make a 50-year trip to Alpha Centauri.
You don't aim for another star system using compressed jet fuel.
You certainly don't. Chemical rockets hit a hard physics wall long before you reach interstellar distances.
And that limitation is the crux of this entire deep dive.
If these theories, from electrogravitics to radial slow manipulation, have successfully transitioned into physical reality within the Black World, the implications are absolutely staggering.
It means that the fundamental limitations of aerodynamics that we accept as absolute laws,
Things like friction, heat dissipation, crushing G-forces, and the sheer weight of carrying your own fuel,
have already been solved.
So, what does this all mean for you? Why should you care about a 70-year-old aerospace mystery?
Because it means that if this technology were ever fully declassified and unveiled tomorrow, it would instantly end the era of jet engines and rocket motors.
It would be the immediate death of the entire aerodynamic paradigm we have lived inside for a century.
Your concept of global travel, of energy consumption, of space exploration would change overnight.
to synthesize the incredible journey we've mapped out today.
We started with Thomas Townsend Brown's 1920s experiments, proving out anomalous thrust with his 100 kilovolt graviter.
We traced the heavily documented, baffling sightings of Foo Fighters stalking Allied pilots over the Rhineland in 1944.
We saw how brilliant aerospace executives in 1956 openly declared that the conquest of gravity was imminent, comparing the timeline directly to the Manhattan Project.
And then we witnessed the immediate, terrifying clampdown.
The fear instilled in engineers like George S. Trimble.
The deliberate disinformation smear campaign against T.T. Brown using the Philadelphia experiment.
And the highly suspicious premature closure of the Operation LUSTY investigations into German electromagnetic weapons.
The evidence strongly suggests that a profound breakthrough occurred, and the moment it did, it was immediately swallowed whole by the black world.
Which leaves us with one final provocative thought for you to explore on your own.
We talked about how obscure math equations can lead to real-world marvels.
Think about how a Russian mathematician's incredibly obscure paper on electromagnetic waves was ignored by the world.
But eventually found by American engineers and used to design the radar-defeating shape of the B-2 stealth bomber.
Dr. Marcus suggested that the blueprint for anti-gravity is currently hiding in similarly dense, boring university math papers.
So take a step back and look at the sky.
What if the entire modern UFO phenomenon, from the 1947 Kenneth Arnold sightings all the way to today's military leaks, wasn't alien at all?
What if those flying saucers you hear about were just the perfect, unbelievable cover story engineered by the military?
A narrative designed specifically to hide humanity's greatest technological leap, flying right in front of our eyes, hidden behind a wall of deliberate absurdity. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep your eyes open and keep questioning what you see.